Welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Ron Potasiak. Hearing the news that a teenager has committed suicide is so tragic. The thought of a person aborting their life in their early stages causes us all to wonder, why? How do these things happen? How could they have gotten help? Isn't there anybody doing something about this? So tonight on Viewpoint, we're going to discuss the need for youth mental health services here in Simcoe, Muskoka. And there is a need in this area in Simcoe County and Simcoe, Muskoka for youth child services. And to help us discuss this need tonight, I welcome a couple of very special guests. I'd like to introduce Amber McAuley. Amber is a chairman of the Move It for Young Minds event, and also Eric Dean, who is the CEO for the RVH, Royal Victoria Hospital Foundation. Welcome to the program. Thanks so much for taking time. I mentioned off the top of the show, a lot of people, you know, when we hear of a teenage suicide, we all wonder, like, what happened? Why would someone at the early stages, what could be so tragic and so difficult for a person at that stage of their life to cause them to end it? Mm-hmm. So maybe Eric, you could help us understand what the issue is.
Sure, I'd love to, Ron.
Yeah.
RVH has been working on this for quite some time now, but we're only really one partner in a really vast group of and integrated network of folks who are working on child and youth mental health. The reason RVH has become involved is because we are the last region in Ontario that doesn't have inpatient child and youth mental health beds in our region. So when a kid really is in trouble, really is struggling, requires inpatient care for diagnosis and creating a treatment plan, crisis intervention, our region has had the unfortunate need to send them out of our community, out of our region, sometimes into Toronto, sometimes over to Sunnybrook, sometimes over to Ottawa, if necessary, in order to get that specialized care. So there are a lot of great community-based services available, CMHA, CANARC, NewPath, the YMCA, several of folks are doing great community-based programs, but we do lack that highest level of inpatient and outpatient support that our kids really need.
So when a person, we're going to speak of youth today for the purpose of this program, is in crisis, where do they go usually?
Well, let's contextualize a little bit. So we'll take one step back and just talk a little bit about the stats. And these are stats across Canada. So we know 20% of Canadians will experience a diagnosable mental health challenge in their lifetime. The stats are the same. 1 out of 5. Yep. The stats are the same for kids. 20% of children between the ages of, say, to 4 to 18 will experience a mental health challenge, something diagnosable, a level of stress and anxiety, a depression, that goes beyond just a situational challenge or of having a blue day. And we also know that of that 20%, of that 1 in 5 kids who has a real mental health challenge, only 1 in 5 of those will actually get care. So 80% is going undiagnosed, perhaps unreported, certainly untreated.
So what's happening to that 80%? I guess the thought that I have is, are they not getting treatment because there are no services, facilities? Are they not getting treatment because they're not aware that they require treatment? Like,
It'll be a little bit of both, really. We certainly still have a challenge in Canada and certainly a challenge here in Simcoe, Muskoka around stigma, and that's really the fear of speaking up. You think of how much we talk about cancer and cancer survivorship, and we don't have that same comfort in talking about mental health. So certainly kids don't necessarily know that the turmoil going on in their mind is different than anybody else's. So it's pretty hard for a kid to self-select, or even for a parent to recognize what is a natural level of anxiety, what's a manageable level of stress, and what really is debilitating, what is getting in the way of a teen being able to function.
Amber, you as chairperson of the Move It for Young Minds event, you've got involved in this area for personal reasons, right?
Yeah,
you
I did.
suffered from a lot of the ailments. Tell us a little bit about what happened to you and how you first determined that you were suffering from depression.
To be honest, I don't know how I first determined that I was suffering. My mom would say I was always very special from the get-go. So that's been noted. But I really started struggling throughout my teens and noticing that I was going into some pretty dark places. I was trying to self-medicate with different substances and other risky behaviors. I did get a diagnosis of severe depression and anxiety. A few doctors had totally written me off as an individual who was probably not going to amount to much in life because of my anxiety. And I made a couple of attempts to take my own life, which was devastating for me as well as my family. So I can see now how it impacts many, many people, not just the individual.
If I can we go back to something that you just said about the dark place?
Yes.
What's the dark place? Could you talk about that?
The dark place.
Yeah, so there.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm asking is there might be some people who are maybe feeling in a certain way that would like to hear what that is.
Well, it feels very, very lonely. Like people would look at me, even today, people look at me and, they think I'm normal, right? They'd never think I was a high school dropout who tried to take her life.
I think you're a very attractive lady who probably has people lined up around the block wanting to date you. But that's just me. Go ahead.
I've been in many dark places though, and even in I'm intelligent and smart enough. I had a family, I had friends, and I danced. So on the outside, it looked like I was maybe okay, but inside I felt so alone and disconnected. Like I couldn't relate to people. I had a lot of, I call them gremlins in my head, just yammering on, catastrophizing about, if I broke up with a boyfriend, it would just be devastating. Or if a friend ignored me, it was, it just hurt so much. And it took me to spiral. For many, many, many years, it was not something that I overcame quickly. Yeah.
How did you overcome it all?
I would say I just had a revelation. I changed perspectives. So I describe it to people. The last attempt at suicide I had was very serious, and the doctors couldn't believe that I survived. So they looked at me like I was a ghost. Like, how did you survive? And I remember distinctly thinking, oh my gosh, I wish I was a ghost right now, but I'm not. I survived. So I decided that instead of carrying on with that cycle of poor me, life is terrible, I don't know what to do, I don't know how my brain, I thought if I can get my together and help just one other person or one family, then it would all be worth it.
Really?
And just that perception, it started me to heal. So after that, I committed to, I'm in this life and I'm going to help other people who relate to me, because it's not nice. I wouldn't wish it upon anybody.
It's really, thank you for sharing that with us, and I know that must be difficult, but when you said you had a revelation, so it was the last suicide attempt that you just suddenly came out of it and realized that, enough is enough, I don't really want to do this?
It was a process. It was just surrendering, like, okay, I'm here, and I have a different role, and what makes me different can make a difference in the world. And I think the same goes for everybody. We all have our quirks, and we can use that as an asset and inspire other people. And I think with mental health, for me, I've been able to use it as an asset, not my dirty little secret. It's something that I can talk about, and I'm okay with it.
Eric, what is your plan then to help deal with this situation that Amber so nicely described, wonderfully described?
Well, as I said, RVH is certainly a part of a team. There's about 14 agencies that have been working together throughout our LIN, which is the local health integration network that helps to manage and coordinate services for healthcare. So together we've been looking at what is the total continuum of care. How do we make sure that we fill in as many of the blanks as we possibly can, especially on the crisis intervention services. So, and this is not new. RVH has known for more than 10 years that this was one of the next things on the list of needs. Right now we're in a campaign called Hearts and Minds, and that involves advanced cardiac care and advanced child and youth mental health inpatient services. So the plan really is within the next year to begin construction and create an 8-bed inpatient unit for children and youth. Match that up with outpatient services as well, so that we can help a child transition from inpatient care, where they would start to work on diagnosis and treatment plan, relaxed re-entry into their everyday life, and an appropriate handoff or transition to community-based care after that. Now, in an ideal world, most kids won't need inpatient care. We'll be able to figure out what is the right treatment plan in advance. And that's already begun through a new crisis intervention program.
I was surprised to learn how many emergency visits that you had as a result of child and youth emergency mental health issues.
Yeah.
And how many?
1,700 visits last year. So this is basically what we call a heat map. It's a map that shows where emergency visits came from across the region of Simcoe-Muskoka. So these are kids who have shown up in Emerge, and that was their primary reason for being there, was a mental health crisis, whether anxiety or depression, self-harm behaviors, suicidal thoughts. We talked about 20% of kids having a diagnosable mental health issue. 10% of kids between 10 and 19 have had suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation, which is active thoughts of taking their own life.
Wow. And I'm going to ask Amber again. So there are a lot of people, I've heard this said, that people who attempt suicide are really crying out for help. How would you respond to that, or what would you say to me about that particular comment?
I think it depends on the individual, for sure. Some individuals, it depends on the severity of the attempt.
But I guess the question I wanted to ask you is, like, you just really wanted to end your life, right?
Yes.
It wasn't like, well, I'll just show you people and I will put you through the gauntlet. That was my case, for sure. It was not necessarily a cry for help. There are so many variables that play in for what motivates people and what outcome they are striving for. I don't think it's something to take lightly, though, whether it's a milder attempt or a more lethal attempt. I think it means that person, whether they're crying out for help or attempting to end their life, they do require some support. Well, let's go back a couple of years, and when maybe you were going through some of these behaviors that you were talking about, people, and you're feeling badly and stuff. So people would say things to you like, "Oh, why don't you just suck it up and just move forward? Why do you get all bent out of shape about things like that?" The stigmas attached to having issues. What does that do for you when you are clearly struggling in your own mind with certain aspects of life?
It beats an individual down more. Like for someone to say, just kind of suck it up, what's going on?
That's not helpful.
It's so unhelpful. It is. And I bought into that, right? I bought into, okay, I'm just...
So I'm going to apologize to my kids for saying that. I'm sorry.
I'm just messed up. I bought into that for a while, and it just perpetuates the problem. So it doesn't really resolve anything for people that are surrounding that individual to think, well, just suck it up. If we could just suck it up, then we would. Nobody wants to be unhappy, and no families or support people want to see that individual so unhappy and dysfunctional. So it's a matter of getting the tools out there to support individuals and families and communities sooner than later, so that it's not just, we'll suck it up. That's an old way of thinking.
Okay, so let's say that option is not a good one. So what coping strategies are you using that are effective, or what could I say or what could I do that could help you?
Listening it's really powerful. Listening without judgment, and being there, just accepting the situation at first, that can really help pause a problem for that moment. So it's not going to maybe fix the problem necessarily, but it's not going to make the problem worse. And sometimes when we are giving advice or we're getting too involved with asking questions, then it can make the problem a little bit worse. If we just listen and give our unconditional support in the moment, that speaks volumes. People say someone listening is really special.
Really important. So what kind of services is RVH, is this sort of the area that you're moving towards?
That's more likely to be community-based than RVH specifically.
Okay.
We talked a little bit about the crisis intervention, and just last fall we did put in place a new urgent consult clinic, and that's something our region really lacked. And that is an opportunity for kids who have
An urgent consult
clinic.
Yeah.
And it's
what is it? So that is some sort of a suicide hotline or something? Or?
Not really.
No?
It's a referral program for kids who have arrived in Emerge anywhere in the region. So Emerge docs across the region have been taught a primary risk assessment just to help figure out whether this child is in a situational stressor or something more prolonged. And it's a standard risk assessment that family doctors can be trained in as well. And so if a child is identified as being a higher risk through that Emerge visit, then within 48 hours to 72 hours, they can be referred to a clinic right at RVH, where they would meet with a Master's of Social Work and Mental Health training to work through a treatment plan. So what is needed here? It's a second level risk assessment, a higher level risk assessment, and then some planning for community-based services or what the next step will be. So that takes some of the pressure off of the family in order to say, okay, we know we've got a referral, we know we aren't going to have to wait 6 weeks to see somebody in the city, and so that's been a help. As Amber was saying, I mean, from a family perspective, I think the listening is really crucial, and the listening without judgment. One of the things, I think one of the most powerful things a parent can say is, thank you for telling me, thank you for sharing that you are feeling that stress, because I care and I need to know this. Because if our first response is that sense of suck it up, or if our first response is, oh, that's terrible, poor you, I'm going to talk to your teacher about this, both have disempowered the child. So being able to listen and say, thank you for putting your hand up, thank you for telling me this is a problem.
And I would think that would cause them to sort of be less likely to want to speak of an issue and more likely to keep it within themselves, which, I mean, I'm not have any clue about how you should be handling these things, but I would think that's got to be a bad thing, keeping it bottled up inside you.
That's not good.
Yeah, no.
So, and as an individual who's struggling, just knowing that there is someone who will listen will help maybe motivate them to share, to talk about it.
Yeah.
And that is a big part of, removing the stigma. As Eric mentioned, it's okay to have these struggles and to share.
So the other thing I was going to ask you, I wonder sometimes when I'm listening to you describe this, whether or not parents are the right people to be listening if you know what I mean. Like, especially in a situation where, I mean, in a clinical situation where we look at all the sort of factors and things, these are the things that we know we should do, but we are emotional people. And somewhere along the line, I'm sure relationships have been damaged to some extent, mom and child. And so you run into a situation where there's no way on God's great earth that mom's going to be an objective listener. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
So what do you do in situations like that, Amber? What do you recommend?
In my opinion, it's our responsibility as adults and communities to share the load, right? It takes a small village to raise a child. So if there is stress in one relationship with a parent, then there's somebody else that I can go to. A teacher, a neighbor, a friend's parent, maybe. And we need to do, in my opinion, a little better in pointing these kids in the direction of, okay, so these are your supports. This is your support network. And it's okay if that street isn't, if that avenue or that person isn't resonating with you, then you have option B, option C, option D, and so on. And it helps ground an individual to know that there are options. And it's very stressful to think I've run out of options.
It's neat to see how the community is responding to this, because again, we've been sort of actively fundraising to start this the Minds part of the Hearts and Minds campaign for about 3 years now. Actually, we're kind of working on it for almost 5. But the number of community organizations that have stepped forward and said this is important, can't tell you the number of times I've spoken to a service club or a business and heard afterwards somebody has come up and said, so glad you guys are working on this because my nephew, my niece, my grandson, myself, my kid has had this struggle and I didn't know what to do.
And this is a growing problem, I understand. Over the last 5-10 years, we've seen more and more and more of this, yes?
Yes, I know within our own Emerge, we've seen, or within the emergence across the region, 1,700 visits last year. That's doubled in the last 5 years. Across Canada, we're seeing emergency departments have been seeing that traffic go up about 30% over the same time period. So ours looks as though the growth is faster. Now that may be because we have more youth moving into the area, and it may be that our stigma reduction has happened more in the last 3 to 5 years, where the rest of Canada may have been a little bit sooner to reduce stigma, that desire to seek out help. So
a lot of people who are listening to this are probably sitting there wondering, why is this happening? Like, what is it about the life today that gives kids such a difficult time? I remember when I was a kid, I used to ride around. You know all that stuff?
Yes,
Like, what's happening? Do you have any thoughts? I know you're both not psychiatrists and have done extensive research, but I mean, you're a lot closer to this than most of us.
There was a neat paper, RBC, Royal Bank has been a phenomenal partner to child and youth mental health for a number of years now. Huge commitment to trying to help lower stigma and to increase access to care. They commissioned a research paper that came out almost exactly a year ago, and it was titled The Worried Generation. And the objective research they went through showed that kids today at 13 and 14 are experiencing a level of stress that my generation saw when we were 25 and 26. So, and it stresses about, am I ever going to get a decent job? Am I ever going to be able to pay for myself? Like at 13 and 14, you know, that kind of career-based angst that we got in our mid-20s.
Where do you think that's coming from?
I think it is coming from just the access to information and the amount of time we spend telling our kids, you know, you're going to have to think about which courses you're going to take in school. And
but I got that when I was a kid too. But I can and again, I don't want to compare generation to generation because it doesn't mean anything really. But at the end of the day, I remember a whole pile of kids sort of like 18 somethings, you know, going to university or wherever, but just wanting to get out there, get a job and get out of the house. Right?
Yeah.
Things have changed a lot today.
Yeah, these
But we
again,
had lots of opportunity. There was lots of opportunity.
yeah, and that's what our youth are feeling is a lack of necessarily an opportunity, and I think we are certainly inundated. You know, the message stream is never off. The amount of information coming into a kid's
And
head.
it's never positive.
True.
Rarely,
Mostly
yeah,
negative.
very rarely.
If
yeah.
there's something negative, a twist, it's on the media. The positive stuff doesn't get through, I think, as much as the negative. But just a comment.
No,
It's something I've noticed too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be a little heavier on the negative side, the shock appeal for readers or wherever you're getting your information. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of like the daily list of deaths around the world caused by weather, train crashes, plane crashes. You know, if it's anywhere in the world, we hear about it now. But so then it's more stressful then for younger people.
Yeah, that's what that certainly seems to be the evidence, and you know, and that's certainly a problem because you know, our impulse control, our brains aren't matured until about 21 and 23. So for these kids to be experiencing that kind of stress at a time when the brain isn't fully formed, when we don't have that impulse control to say, okay, tomorrow's another day, you know, the reactivity is very, very sudden.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah. The children and youth don't have the same development that adults do, and they are not able to filter as much. It's like instant gratification, and you know, people all over, young and old, are really fueled by that instant gratification right now, right? How quick are you looking at your phone, or you want your meals now? We want everything now. And that can cause a lot of stress because it's not necessarily how life works. Now.
That's incredible. That's the cause of the stress, is this sort of ADD almost when it comes to just living.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, yeah, when you think of the amount of multitasking our kids do today, and have for the last 10 years, being able to, you know, texting while studying, while listening to music, while watching TV.
Yeah.
Great. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the role of social media in mental health today. Welcome back. Today we're talking about youth mental health issues in Simcoe County, the Simcoe-Muskoka area. And with a couple of very special guests, Eric Dean, who is the CEO of the RVH Foundation, and Amber McAuley, who is the chairman for the Move It for Young Minds event. And great to, again, welcome back to the program. The role of social media. You talked about instant gratification and texting. What role has social media played, Amber?
Oh boy, how long do we have?
Well,
It's, you know, I heard someone describe it this way and that made a lot of sense. So before social media and the evolution of technology, you'd get into a squabble with a friend and you would both know about it, maybe a couple people who are in the hall or in the parking lot. Now you get into a squabble with someone, it's posted on Facebook or some social media page, and thousands of people can find out about it.
and this is the bullying part, right?
Yeah.
You can bully on social media.
That is going to really impact an individual more than just that one-to-one. You know, to know that so many people have liked or commented or reacted to the argument I had or the conflict I was in at school, that just, yeah.
Really?
I think that's the best way that I can describe that piece is that, you know, you have these challenges and there's no privacy anymore. Everybody knows
So
about
you
it.
know what? When you outline these things, like my thoughts automatically go to how are we ever going to solve this problem if there is a solution to it?
You know, I've got some hope on social media as an agent for change as well.
Yes.
You know,
that's
certainly the Bell Let's Talk. There's a number of good social media elements and commercials and such that are focusing on reducing stigma and getting kids talking. If anything, our children are way better at supporting each other than we are at our age and dealing with our own friends with mental health issues. The language is coming to them earlier. I think school boards are starting to really work on helping kids identify when they're struggling and creating more supportive environments, which is great. It's maybe a little bit late to the party, and it's taking some time to sink in. A neat example for me is when we talked about community support. We had last year, Metroland Media started a Media for Young Minds campaign, doing a series of editorial stories on child and youth mental health, but also encouraging local businesses to do fundraising ventures. You know, $10 off of an oil change at Active Green or Ross, that kind of thing. This is where Amber's event started up last year as well. But one of our first partners in that was McDonald's, and so for the last 3 years, they've donated the local proceeds of McHappy Day to child and youth mental health. And as we went through starting that up, we met with the owners. Between the two owners locally, they run several different restaurants and employ about 650 youth. So we help them with some fact sheets to put up in their staff rooms. Their managers talked about what the business is doing and what the McHappy Day message would be, and they found 650 kids. That means that out of that 20%, 120 would be experiencing a mental health challenge. 65 of them would have had thoughts of suicide already.
Wow. Yeah.
And what they saw was in the staff room, kids were saying, "Yep, my sister, my cousin, myself have had this issue," and so that's become a work environment. One of the most highest youth employers in the area, who has created their own improved awareness. And that awareness that it's safe to talk about feeling stressed and about feeling challenged. So I do have a lot of hope around how kids are being taught to self-monitor and start to think about how they support each other. And social media is helping with that. So, you know, like many tools, it has the potential for damage, and it has some potential for improvement as well.
Many people suggest that parents should maybe monitor what their children are watching, doing on their phones. I don't know at what age you stop that, but I personally think that that might be very difficult to do. But your thoughts on that, Amber?
It is difficult for a parent to monitor everything. I don't think it's realistic for a parent to monitor their child 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
There are some ways that parents can monitor more. Even simple things like all cell phones are left in the kitchen at night. That's, you know, that's a simple thing that's some time that a parent could be monitoring the use of the device, or having a computer, laptop common area in a common area. Mm-hmm. Those are little things that parents can do, and just teaching, as Eric said, the social media can be used for positive. So teaching kids and youth how to access great resources online and to use it to enhance their life and their well-being, as opposed to, you know, put it down.
So as you said earlier, 20% of kids suffer from some sort of mental issue or crisis. As a parent, how do you identify when it's a crisis or when it's just a bad day? Can you help us here a little bit? So if there are people who are watching saying, gee, what are some of the behaviors that would, and then what would you do if you did have some concerns? So Amber, you want to start with that?
Having heartfelt conversations with your kids is a place to start. Even just being open about saying, hey, I watched this show today and they were talking about child and youth mental health, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on it. It doesn't have to be a real formal discussion or assessment. It can just be something so simple like, I've been reading these statistics. Wow, like what have you seen? What have you been feeling? Opening the door and then listening.
You know, that is impressive. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Eric?
I'd you know, fully agree. I mean, the more we can try to just have the conversation. You talked about warning signs, and you know, as we said, I mean, I'm not a clinician; I'm a fundraiser. Yeah. But you know, from the work we've done with our mental health team, with the work we've done with RBC, we've done a couple of breakfasts now that have helped to work on stigma and awareness. Watching for withdrawing. You know, when kids do withdraw from favorite activities. We'll often hear that, this child used to be so into sports and started to drop away from that. So, you know, looking for those changes of behavior. I know in the risk assessments, and I've gone through risk assessments myself with my family doc, it is that sense of, so, you know, how long have you been feeling this way? Is this sustained? How much is it affecting your sleep? Is it affecting your diet? Is it affecting your ability to want to leave the house? Your ability to function in a way that you're comfortable with? So it really is about impact. How much is this actually impacting life and ability to enjoy life? So watching for the withdrawn behaviors. I mean,
well, I would think like some of the things that just come to the top of my mind is kids struggling at school, not wanting to go to school, not wanting to get up in the morning, those kind of things. Are those warning signs?
Yes, yeah. And anytime, as I mentioned, it's sometimes it feels so lonely. So naturally, if an individual is struggling and not feeling comfortable to talk about it, they will kind of reinforce that lonely feeling by isolating themselves and removing themselves from being around other people. So those are definitely warning signs. Skipping class, removing themselves from school, skipping the family dinners, hanging out for long periods in their room. Those are all signs for sure.
Okay, so let's say you have some concerns. What do you do? What do you do?
Not being clinical.
No,
yeah,
just like, where do you go for help?
Yeah. There is the 211 is a good
Yeah.
online resource.
So
It's my-
Ontario,
yeah.
what is this now?
211 Ontario
Yeah.
is a go-to that a lot of parents have said it's a place to start.
So this is a website that
Yes.
a parent can go to?
Yes. Or even a
Child
a
as well?
youth or
Yeah.
a child to show these resources to your kids is very valuable too.
It's a bit of a clearinghouse, so you kind of search for your area, search for the region, and search within categories. So it could be mental health and then youth, or mental health and addictions and youth, and that will identify sort of which agencies are working in that area, and then you can start to figure out what resources might be available. Some of it just is, you know, those kinds of looking for, you know, a risk assessment or a signs background, doing a little bit of research to get a better feel for what might be within and outside of the bounds of safety.
And I want to go way back, and we talked about your situation earlier, Amber, and your coping skills. So what are you helping with kids today in their coping skills? What's that message that you're giving them? You said you really
Like specific
helping them.
tools?
Yeah. What do you encourage them to do?
Well, what I've found helpful for me, and then I've shared with other people, is tools for self-regulation. So a big part of my own maintenance in mental health is mindfulness practices, and there's a lot of research.
So give us an example. Give us an example of such practice.
Breath is
No, I'd like to know.
breathing
Breathing.
consciously.
Yep.
So paying attention to one thing in the moment on purpose without judging. That's sort of a textbook example, but
Yeah.
I did bring this little thing.
Awesome,
Is this
please.
a good time?
Yeah,
Okay.
great. Yes, please.
So
What is that? It
this
looks
is
like
a sphere.
Uh-huh.
I think it's a sphere. And we just sometimes our stress levels, adults, children, and youth, all likely, are because our minds are ruminating. We're either worried about the future or thinking about the past, and we're kind of stressed. So mindfulness practices help us come to the here and the now. So it short circuits that ruminating mind. Something pretty and tangible like this can draw attention to the moment. And this one in particular I like because it expands, kind of like the body does when you inhale, and then it contracts, like the body would when you exhale. So having something visual like this can
Helps.
really capture my attention and take me to my breath, and as I said, short circuit any thoughts that are really not helping me in the moment.
That's a shame. I'm looking at that thinking, boy, I can't use that when I'm driving. That would
No,
be almost as
no.
bad as texting, but that would be a good
There's
for
a
me.
time and a place. And there's, you know, mindfulness tools, props, and supports are fairly easy to find. This is just one of them.
And you mentioned coping mechanisms, and that really is what so much of this is about, because we have positive coping mechanisms and we have negative coping mechanisms. You know, and if kids don't learn problem solving and positive coping mechanisms, then they and adults will move to negative coping mechanisms.
And a negative, like we will move off to drugs and
Yep. Yeah.
drinking, that kind of thing.
Because you know, it's so often, you know, seeking out substances, alcohol and drugs, may be an attempt to still the mind, an attempt to escape that constant ruminating mind. And we all have that. I mean, we all have negative thoughts. We all have a tendency to second guess our actions or think about the future or worry. And it really is a matter of degree. So for some, and there are mental health issues that really are much more biochemical than that. But for a lot of anxiety and depression, it is a matter of degree, and the sooner that it can be captured, identified, and the positive coping mechanisms established, the better the outcome. One of the psychiatrists we had in that was helping us develop the program sat down with us and taught us that the brain is adapted to find its coping mechanism and then repeat it. And depression is a coping mechanism. It is a way that the body says, I can't take this mind anymore, and says, oh, so I'm going to withdraw. I'm going to withdraw. I'm going to create physical symptoms as well to withdraw from this situation. And you know, for a person who does go into a deep depression, that works. It stopped the mind. So the body will remember that, the brain will remember that, and it wires towards that. So whatever coping mechanism we use becomes stronger. So his point was that we know that 70% of adult mental health symptoms started in the teen years. If we can help a teen develop positive coping mechanisms, that may mean 3 episodes of depression in their lifetime rather than 30. And that really is the difference between a great life and a challenged life.
So there's a lot of people who are looking at this, and listening to you say, or talking about funding and raising money and working with, like, where is the funding for this? Like, most of us would think that this would be sort of handled through our healthcare system, and you're not receiving those funds for those programs?
We are. I mean, certainly provincially and nationally, there has been a lot more investment in the last few years on suicide awareness and suicide strategies in particular. A lot more on mental health, and particularly child and youth mental health. So the funds are coming. It's still a little bit fragmented. In our case, for the inpatient unit, the creation of the unit is the community's job. So that'll be our job to raise the funds to actually do the renovation and the construction.
I understand.
The government will have a role in the operating dollars. We're still working with government on the appropriate share of funds to actually run that program.
Sure.
But it'll be about $5 million for us to actually create the space that will house this program. And then we still have to recruit the child psychiatrists and the specialists that will be able to work with the kids.
Now, when you talked about this earlier, you mentioned, how big was this? Your plan is to have, what, 8?
An 8-bed inpatient unit, yes.
But when I take 1,700 and I multiply that by 20%, that's a little bit more than 8. So that's just really starting the program, yes?
Yes and no. At 8 beds, we would match the same number of beds per 100,000 or per 1,000 population that the rest of the province has. So out of that, out of the 1,700 emerge visits, a fraction of those might actually require inpatient care.
I see.
Some others will be able to be managed with a family doctor, with community-based resources. So it really is we would expect to see about 300 admissions a year with our population base and the size of our youth base. So the 8 beds would sustain us, would sustain a good inpatient and outpatient program.
That's excellent, and I want to go back to something else. We've heard a lot about self-harming behaviors. Tell us what self-harming behaviors are. And
well, I think most people know of self-harming as an individual who cuts him or herself.
So I want to run something by you, and again, I'm trying to use my words carefully because I just suddenly realized how much of the stigma that I probably am perpetuating by some of the things that are going on in my mind. And so I'm going to try to be a little more politically correct. But there's these, I love to watch these things on YouTube. They're called epic fails. And one of the things that I really enjoy is watching how absolutely stupid some people are. And they'll jump off of buildings, they'll do all kinds of crazy stuff. And I'm not watching it to watch somebody get hurt. I'm just sitting there thinking, like, well, what did you think was going to happen? And I mean, there's The Science is Stupid on TV and some of these other programs. But
Yeah.
I'm starting to think now that, is that self-harming behavior? I mean, when somebody jumps off.
I don't know the show.
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff on the internet where
Yeah.
people are doing crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So there's this whole seems like a whole culture of let's do something very dangerous and scary, and the scarier and danger, and people are getting killed and hurt, and it's bad.
David Suzuki actually has this fantastic documentary called Surviving the Teenage Brain. And he talks about how teens are going to do crazy things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they're at.
And that's sort of normal.
That's normal.
Okay.
And in some ways, he talks about how it's really important for our evolution to have the teens go through that, because they think outside the box. So, they're very creative, and they think outside the box, and then we have new ideas, and we evolve together. So there is a line between risky behaviors that are part of normal development, and then risky behaviors that are putting an individual,
like cutting
in severe
yourself
risk. Like,
and stuff.
yeah, that would be a different category.
You talked a little bit about stigma and about thinking about our language, and that I think would be valuable to chat a little bit about as well. One of the exercises we did at the resilience breakfast that we did with RBC was red words and green words.
Well, see, the one that was on my mind was crazy.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
Yes.
not
Is that
it's
a
probably
red
not a
word or
good
green?
word.
No, and there's a lot. And advertising today is
But
pretty
when we
rough on
say
this.
it, like when I say it, like I don't mean to harm
Yes.
anybody.
No, absolutely.
Like I say it in jest, and it might just catch somebody the wrong way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is that matter of of thinking about where words do matter and how they impact the young mind in particular. You used a common phrase earlier, I've committed suicide. Within mental health, we're trying to expunge that phrase because committed implies choice. And what we know of suicide is that to the individual, it does not appear to be a choice. It is a lack of choice that causes somebody to consider suicide.
Interesting.
So you don't just say somebody committed cancer.
Yes.
If we're recognizing that mental health is a disease, we're starting to see obituaries using died by suicide or died from suicide. I can't tell you the number of calls we get now from parents who have lost a child, who do call and ask us to help them with the wording for an obituary, or help us or ask for help on the language that they could use in order to have memorials go to us. I'm speaking at a wake this week for a young man who died as a result of addiction that will have come about as a result of anxiety and a childhood of strain, of emotional strain. So the stories are there, and it does devalue to think about suicide or mental health as a choice. So we went through a number of.
You know what? I never looked at it that way. That's
Yeah.
very. That's.
And that is the perceptual shift I think we
Yeah.
need.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. We throw out words like crazy.
Yeah.
We talk about somebody being a schizo or being psycho or she's so bipolar, and all of those are
Yet,
tough phrases.
I think back now on all of the stuff you say, and I think one of the comments is I learn so much on this program every week. But some of the people that I've known who we've described as being crazy, and what I mean by that is like they're always fun at a party. That guy's so crazy. It's always great at a party. End up taking their lives, and you're shocked when you hear it, because you think, or they were so much fun all the time, and I don't understand it. That was some sort of an issue. Amazing. So, Amber, do you feel you're cured?
I've been asked that before,
Yep.
and I don't know. All I know is my own brain, and
seem
I've
so
lived with this,
happy.
my brain.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm sure clinicians might have an opinion. If I did some psychological testing now, I haven't done some in a while, so I don't know what it would say. I know that I do live a healthy lifestyle. I don't take any prescription drugs. I'm able
Awesome.
to function in society and do a job, and I have a daughter, raise a family. I have challenges, though. I think everybody is
Sure.
uniquely designed, and my challenges are no different than yours. You know, I have different challenges, I'm sure, and I've found healthy coping tools to manage those challenges. And yeah, whether I'm cured or not, I don't know. Maybe I'll come back next year and I'll have done some assessments and let you know.
That would be awesome. We've just got a couple minutes left, and I just, for any people out there that might connect with this story or connect with this issue and would want to help or get involved with your endeavors, what could they do?
Oh, well, it's interesting. The month of June is the next Media for Young Minds, so there will be businesses across the region really now. If you keep an eye out, you may see some folks who are raising funds through their business, which is terrific. The foundation website is foundation.rvh.on.ca. There's information there on how to donate and help. Absolutely encourage people to think about community-based resources as well. So all of these resources could use help. CMHA, Kinark, New Path, YMCA, so many great community-based organizations. Watch out for Move It for Young Minds.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be a great event that really gathers a wonderful community of
Quickly,
people.
tell us about that event.
We're rolling out our second year, August 27th. It's a short day. We meet at St. Vincent Park. There's a great team of people in the community. We had over 30 local business owners support the event last year. We raised a ton of excitement and money and prizes. And we did a creative exercise walk move along the lakeshore. We looped around at the Spirit Catcher, and it was awesome. So much fun.
Thank you so very much for being with us today. Eric Dean, who is the CEO of the RVH Foundation, and Amber McAuley, who is the chairman for the Move It for Young Minds event. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure meeting you, and all the very best. And we thank you for watching Viewpoint. We'll see you next time.